Hey everybody, my name is Justin Taylor. I am the founder of Wow College Essay and Admissions, and you are in the right place if you are working on your college applications. This is the second part of a series of webinars about making applications that wow. This is about supplemental essays, those school-specific prompts and statements that help schools get to know you a little more close up, get to know your resume, your character, other things. And why don't I just go ahead and dive on in to the content, since that's what we're here to do. So first off, we're going to look at the biggest supplement that's most common, which is the why us essay. Why this school? Why you and this school? And we'll look at what makes one that really stands out, that's really strong, that gets all the details about you packed in there like fruit in a fruitcake. We're going to look at some examples of strong why us essays. We're going to look at the steps it takes to write one, so you can use your time in this webinar to actually get yours started. We're going to create what's called a super essay. So this is a why us essay that you could personalize for each school that's asking for it. So rather than having to start from zero, you have a template that you update to the details and criteria of the school that you're applying to, saving a lot of time. So we'll take a look at how to make that thing. We're also going to take a look at this part of the application called the additional information section. It is not often talked about, but it is a secret backdoor into getting schools to really notice key information about you that helps your application cohere around some specific messages. It really helps you direct their attention to certain things about you, your resume, that schools can remember and use as a shorthand for you when they talk about you. It's sort of like, hey, look at me, look at this specific stuff. If you think about me, think about this. We will talk about how to make one of those. And then if you want questions. So the why us essay is not often asked, why us? It's asked in many different ways. What about being a student at X university most excites you? Why did you apply to each of the academic programs listed on your application? Submit a statement of purpose that communicates your plans and goals related to the pursuit of your chosen program. By the way, these are all prompts from schools. How might you engage specific resources, opportunities, and/or communities here? Share something you'd like the admissions committee to know about you, your interests, background, identity, community, and how it has shaped you and what you want to get out of college. Describe your academic career plans and special interests that you were eager to pursue at an undergraduate degree. So all of these are essentially asking the same question, why us? So what makes a really, really good one? This is going to be the bulk of our conversation today. First, you have to be sharing specifics about why you belong at the school you're applying to. And this really gets down into matching your resume, your experiences on your resume, and what the school offers. So I'm going to talk to you about how to do that. Again, connecting school offerings to your resume over and over and over and over and over. Oh, I want to go into, I don't know, a pottery making program. And I'm going to talk to you about all of the pottery experiences that I have and how I'm going to rely on them in XYZ pottery classes and XYZ pottery fellowships and XYZ pottery abroad programs. You kind of get my idea. So the other thing a really strong why us essay does is it articulates genuine questions you have that you want to answer at the college. Academic questions. Life questions you also have that you want to answer, and that's beautiful and right, but you don't share them here in this space. In this space, you share mostly scholastic academic questions that you might really enjoy investigating and finding the answer to. So I'm going to help you think about and articulate some questions for yourself. We're going to also look at how to articulate what I call a personal philosophy of learning. So one major thing they're looking at in the YS essay, and one of the main reasons they ask it, is to see how much of an autonomous learner are you? How much are you actually thinking about and in charge of your educational plan? Do you have a vision for what good learning is to you? And I like to encourage everyone I work with to find this philosophy and to sum it up a little bit for the school in a YS essay. I will talk about how to do that in a way that's a little more creative than just saying it out loud, outright. The other thing about a YS essay is it's not literary. It's not narrative. It's more like the cover letter or response in a job interview. So the style of writing is a little more conversational. It's more nuts and bolts. It's much more about details about you and the school. It's really not about creating images or lasting impressions through stories about you or images from your life. There are definitely spaces to do that in other supplements, and those kinds of devices really matter in the application. You want to have strong images and stories in your application, but this is not the space to really have that. So let's take a look at a short YS essay. This one's only 250 words. This student does a really great job of following all of these suggestions. And this student did very well at their admissions process. So for them, they created a philosophy of learning. It was: a good education is like a good playlist, a rich and eclectic journey through my interconnected core passions. At BU, so this was her supplement to BU, I will dig into mathematics and mathematics education like I dig into my favorite R&B beats, broadly and deeply. In problem solving in mathematics, I'll build on my work with linear programming and ask, what strategies have I yet to explore? Similar to how a rapper or a singer can express the same truth, in history of mathematics, I can't wait to learn what mathematicians throughout history have reached similar conclusions despite different approaches. As a peer tutor, I adjust my teaching to each classmate, varying my questions and examples. Dr. Greg Benoit's creative approaches to mathematical solutions, gamification, and student-centered engagement inspire me to consider an independent study with him and ask, how can teachers relay mathematics to better reach an aha moment with a student? Let's break down what this essay has in it. You can tell she hits a lot of stuff really fast, but let's break it down. Oh, wait, nope, there's more. That's right, there's one more paragraph here. In my indie funk playlist of female queer artists, I feel empowered, like when I stumbled upon BU's Vagmo Plus club table at my tour. I saw myself at Vagmo Plus sharing what it really is to be a woman and even doing a vagina monologue on campus. I also love expanding my musical taste like Brazilian favela funk. In the same way, the BU Hub expands educational taste. The BU Hub is a way to get some core GE requirements. And so she continues, in Portuguese for Spanish speakers 1, I look forward to learning how the two languages correlate linguistically and culturally. I can't wait to make this playlist of courses a reality at BU. All right, so now let's break it down. Sorry, I jumped a little early there. First of all, she does a great job of connecting school offerings to her resume and asking good questions. So she finds this course problem solving in mathematics. She likes it. She wants it to build on her work with linear programming. So if you looked at her resume, you might see that she's done some advanced mathematics in this subject of math. And that she wants to ask the question, what strategies have I yet to explore? when it comes to solving linear programming. Then she identifies as Professor Benoit, for an independent study. She really likes his creative techniques, creative teaching techniques, and she has a lot of that in her own life. She wants to use it to build on her work as a tutor with low-income minority communities. She asks, how can teachers relay mathematics to better reach an aha moment with students? So that's on the academic side of her statement. She identifies things beyond academics, like the feminist club and the Portuguese course for personal enrichment. But she also connects those to her. It's not just, these are some things I'm interested in. She talks about herself and why these things matter to her. She also has a great metaphor to communicate this philosophy of learning, the playlist. So when the school reads it and they talk about her, they can go, oh yeah, the playlist woman who loves music and might be a great math teacher. I would really love to have her be my math teacher one day. She's so cool. She uses it at the beginning, she uses it throughout, and at the end. So let's take a look at how to start doing something like this one student did. And she is indeed now studying mathematics and math education at BU. She is thrilled. If any of you want to ever get a hold of any of my former students, absolutely cool with me. Reach out to me. I'm happy to connect you. My students love to talk to high school applicants or college applicants who are in high school, because they were in your shoes once too. All right, so the first thing to do is actually not to create the philosophy of learning and all of that, but it's actually really start down in the nuts and bolts of college, which is courses. You want to identify 2 or 3 contrasting course types in your intended area of study or areas of study that actually excite you. So this does take research. You have to do this for every single school for which you are submitting a YS essay. It's not just you do it once and you forget about it. This is the part that you have to change out in the essay every time you create the YS essay. So you might have the frame, the structure, like the former student has the playlist content, but the course content and the independent study and the club and all of that are swapped out every time she submits this statement, okay? So to start the very first one though, the best way to do it is to actually just go straight to the school website, go to the course catalog, look at the courses in your intended areas of study. So if it's a major, look in the major courses. If it's double major, look at both. Major, minor, look at both. You want at least 2, usually. 3 is even better. She only had 2 in hers because it was a short word count. 3 is a little better. And you want these courses to contrast a little bit. Just a little bit of contrast. So she had problem solving for mathematics. And actually, she only had 1 course because, again, the word count was short. But she had the contrasting Portuguese course, right? And then also the independent study. Well, I'm getting a little ahead of you. So again, look for courses that aren't all about the same exact thing is what I'm trying to say here. So here are some examples. If you're a business student, you might think, okay, history of capitalism. That's sort of a history course. Horizontal leadership. Okay, that's about leadership. That's about the nuts and bolts of actual business doing. Impact investing. Okay, it's a niche area of banking. These are all related to me, but they're all in different kinds of dimensions or facets of learning about business. Great. A neuroscience student who also is really interested in women's health. She might go for human development in the brain, pretty classic. But she also might do domestic abuse treatment and prevention. Pretty different, right? Maybe not even in the science side of the School of Arts and Letters. And then medical ethics, which might be a bridge between those 2 ideas. The math student, of course, history of mathematics. Oh, that's right, she did that. I'm sorry, I forgot. She had the history of mathematics, and then creative problem solving in mathematics, and then Portuguese 1. So I am glad I have a PowerPoint to correct me. Well, I hope you're having fun with me too. All right. The next thing to do when you're doing this research in the website is to identify special research opportunities in your area of interest. And there's many different types of research opportunity. There are fellowships, there are internships, there are independent study projects, there are like senior year capstone projects. All of these are basically a special research opportunity. It's important to identify one because the schools like to see that you're actually looking at what happens when you're a student there, not just in freshman year, but the entire time, and that you are planning for the whole experience, and that you're thinking ahead about it. You do not have to do any of the things that shows up in the supplement, by the way. I should make this a big caveat. You are just showing them that you've thought it through at least once, right? You don't need to actually do the plan that you find if you get in and you go. You can totally pivot, and many students totally pivot. I've had students get in to do pre-med and then pivot to something else completely. So it's really okay. So this is not to lock you in to some plan for 4 years. It's just to show that you are paying attention to yourself and to the school. So a business student, as an example, might look for a fellowship in a foreign emerging market. Like, I really want to go to East Africa and learn about markets in that kind of country or area or region. Again, the neuroscience student might look at doing some kind of study, linking a disease, a neurological disease like MS, and language learning. That's pretty niche, right? But when you are drilling in and trying to connect with the school, these kinds of specifics really help. So this math education student, she wanted to do this independent research that she explained, teaching math to ESL students. All right, then extracurriculars. So identify 2 to 3 extracurriculars that are similar to ones you do now. So not ones that you have never tried before, but ones that you are actually in some form doing now and want to continue to do in college. Because again, it's important that you connect what you talk about here with what you've already done, because that really helps the school see that you are ready to be the student they are looking at. You're ready to be that college student. So the business student might go to a business leaders club, a Chinese American club, a social investing group. Let's see, the neuroscience student might go to the women's shelter to volunteer. She might join university band because she has a lot of music on her activity sheet. And then she might do a women in medicine club. And then that math student, as we learned, wants to do math tutoring for local youth and join the feminist club. And the third one, she didn't have room for, but those 2 still worked. Then the second to last step is the questions. So you need to identify some questions you want these offerings to answer. So you go back to the courses that you've identified. And for each course, you look at your resume. No, we'll save this. For each course, you look at the description and you find, a question that is genuine for you that you hope to answer in that course. So here's some examples of this. The business student could go how does taxing the top 1% impact economic growth? So they might do that in the history of capitalism. They might be like, I want to try the history of capitalism and answer this question. How does taxing the top 1% impact economic growth? And they could look through history to see how that might have impacted economic growth. Another question, how can businesses and local impact organizations partner and learn from each other? This might be something he might ask in an impact investing course, or maybe a social entrepreneurship course. Let's see what the neuroscience student might ask. How can Western ethical frameworks inform medical research? So she had that medical ethics course listed. So this is the question she might ask when she talks about it. How could domestic violence prevention work connect with my neuroscience studies? If you have two disparate topics that you want to pursue, that's wonderful. I actually encourage all my students to have more than one passion, more than one topic that's academic in their application, because when they overlap, it gives the student dimension. We all have dimension already. We don't need to be given dimension. But when it comes to communicating ourselves in the application, it's helpful to articulate and name things so that the image of you has dimension, right? So I do a whole exercise with my students called the passion exercise, where we identify 3 passions, and where they overlap is the sweet spot. And so you look for offerings, courses that hit that sweet spot. And also you look for stories about you that also show those things overlapping. And they become kind of the core content of the application. If you want more information about that particular exercise, I did a webinar in July that's now online called How to Get into the Top 20 US Colleges. I go over that exercise in great detail, so go check that out. So what would the math student ask in the YS essay? Well, we already heard this. What math teaching strategies have I yet to explore? How can teachers relay mathematics to better reach an aha moment with students? Yeah. Then you want to connect these things to your resume. So this is the big step. So the business student might connect history of capitalism to a business summer camp, horizontal leadership to an internship they did at Cisco, let's say, an impact investing course. They might connect to the Georgetown summer business course, on and on and on and on and on. We're actually going to look at a statement which does all of this. This is all pulled from an actual very successful YS essay. Then you put it all together with the specific offerings. So we're going to now take a look at a statement from a student named Miles, who very successfully applied these ideas and formats and structures in his statements, and he did super duper well. He got into every single place he applied, basically. So let's see how he does the magic. So I'm going to read this aloud, and just so you can get the sense of it. I'm not going to read everything, because this YS statement, unlike the last one, is more than twice as long. So I'm just going to give you the overview here. So he starts out with his model of learning. In middle school, I scoured the news to learn how events across the world affected businesses I used. How did the Paris Accords affect my favorite stock, Amazon? Did American dissatisfaction with globalization and automation hand Donald Trump the presidency? This curiosity led me to take business-focused camps. Camp Bismart for an entrepreneur's perspective, Wall Street 101 at Bentley University for global finance and investing exposure, and an internship at Cisco Systems for high-tech experience. My eagerness to go beyond the traditional ABC view of business, accounting, banking, and consulting took me to Georgetown's Global Business Academy. My professor, Craig O'Connor, illuminated the power of renewable energies to lift millions out of poverty in emerging markets. I awoke to the intersection of business and social justice, which could benefit the lives of millions, if not billions of people. So he's getting into a strong theme he wants to explore here, the intersection between business and social justice. As a Ross BBA student, I will dive deeper into this intersection in the same way I approach building a computer. Every subject matter, like every part, interconnects, building on one another. So there's his metaphor for learning. It's like building a computer. So the first two paragraphs are like his background preamble about himself. And when you have longer word count like you do at UMich, it's a really nice thing to do. It's you give a little bit of what I call the origin story, the experiences that have led you to pursue the major you want to pursue or the degree you want to pursue. I'll just continue reading some of this so you get how he connects things up. I want to connect the dots between business, global politics, and societal trends. In business government relations, I will seek to build on my internship at Anchor Pacific Capital, where Anton Key, CEO, shared his thoughts on how fiscal policy, both in San Francisco and nationwide, would affect his property management firm in 10 years. This foresight predict, and more importantly, plan around the cause and effect of policy particularly interested me. It got me wondering how proposed taxes on the top 1% would impact the overall economy in the future. Furthermore, how will government fiscal policy related to the pandemic affect government debt? So all of this he's thinking about in this government relations course. In the same way that I add a graphics card to power demanding applications, I will add business law and ethics to discover how successful leaders integrate business ethics into their goals and understand the legal aspects and responsibilities of their businesses. I will partake in business and impact to continue my SMOCA experience, working with nonprofits and local community leaders. So SMOCA was an Asian American, I think it's particularly Chinese American, community organization where he was a major presence and sort of a super intern. He wants to ask in this course, how can organizations and local businesses work together to fulfill their missions and grow profits? He continues, like adding fans to cool the motherboard. I admire how Ross cools capitalism with business strategies for the base of the pyramid. I look forward to learning more about how businesses can increase their bottom line while improving the lives of those in poverty. Just like a computer cannot run without a cooling system, businesses cannot last if they continuously exploit their labor force. Inclusive capitalism ensures sustainability. So he's sharing a lot about his ethic. Notice he's not describing these courses. This is one thing that I often correct in the students that I work with. Rather than talk about themselves and their resume and the questions they want to ask, they just describe the course back to the school as if the school needs to hear their course description again. It's a waste of word count. Really, all they want is to hear about you. So he goes on and on like this, talking about special research and, you know, all of the clubs and so on. I won't read this, but I think you get the idea. And now let's break it down. First off, he connects these school offerings with the internship he had and the two internships that he mentions, the one at this capital investing firm and the Asian American, Chinese American community, like Chamber of Commerce style community organization. Then he talks about going beyond academics in the clubs in campus life section. He's going to join the Asian American Association, work at the Detroit Neighborhood Entrepreneurs Project. He also uses this really successful metaphor to communicate his idea of learning, or his philosophy of learning, which is building a computer. And then of course he uses that at the end to button it up. So when you're doing these, I just want to point out that was a very long version of the YS essay, and you're going to find versions that are like sometimes as short as 100 words. Sometimes just 200 words, like Columbia University. and others are going to be 650 words, like Cornell. So you have to be able to expand and contract this model. So instead of having all of this stuff, you might have just like 1 or 2 courses, 1 club, a brief mention of the philosophy of learning. Maybe you'll get a special research identified, a special research opportunity identified. But it's really just about showing you've taken a look and you've done the work. If you get up to 650 words, you don't have to use all of them. For YS essays especially, they don't need so much detail about you to see you're ready. So just because there's that much space doesn't mean you ought to use it all. The other thing that can also happen with these applications is that the readers get really tired and they kind of glaze over. So if the essays have a bit of a dryness to them, like a YS essay can be a little bit dry because of what it's asking the student to do. Brevity is really, really helpful. I do really like in Miles's YS essay, he gets into his values, and that really, really helped him in his applications, in his admissions process. He articulated his values very strongly. So when you're doing your YS essay, think about where you can also share what matters to you most in the courses you choose and in the metaphor that you use to describe your philosophy of learning. All right, so I'm going to put a button on the YS essay. If you have any questions about it, just throw it into the Q&A. We're going to take questions in a few minutes. So now I want to talk about another section that's just scintillating and fabulous, called the additional info section. Well, again, this is a little bit dry in terms of its content, but it can be really, really key in how schools read your application. It's a section where you can write pretty much anything. It's just a blank space in the Common App, and it is optional. It is not to be used at maximum word count. I like to say, if you didn't get to say it elsewhere, say it here briefly. Briefly. There are 2 parts to this section. The first part is somewhat new. It's the COVID section. It's basically a space where you can talk about any hardships you experienced because of COVID that affected your education. This is not a place to say, I really struggled with online learning. Okay, everyone did online learning. Don't talk about your struggles with online learning. Every single college student, high school student, everybody had to do this. So no need to share that. But if there was a chunk of your education where you didn't have a physics teacher because they were sick and the school couldn't find someone to replace them, you should be sharing that. Or there was someone sick in your family and you had to take care of them and couldn't go to school. That affects, both those kinds of situations affect your education. Everything else goes in the general section. The COVID section, I think, is 500 word count, and the general section is 650. Again, do not use all of them. These sections are optional, meaning it's on borrowed time when it comes to the time the admission readers have. You do not have to read these sections. They will if you put something eventually, but it is not to be used in a dense way at all. And I'll explain the formatting for this section in a second. I just want to explain the general side of the additional info first. So non-COVID hardships go here. So if anything affected your education that has nothing to do with COVID, you could put that here. I got sick with something else. I had a major injury and couldn't go to class, or some other medical issue. or someone in the family, or like a parent lost a job. That could all go here because it does affect you. And it affects your ability to do classes and homework. The main thing I want to talk to you about is how you can use this section to highlight resume elements and activities in more depth, in a way that you couldn't do in your supplements. So we talked about how the YS essay helps you talk up your resume a little bit, but it's not really in depth. And the activities section of the Common App does not allow you to really talk about any activities in a lot of depth. You can't get like a lot of the major events of that activity, or stats, or relationships from that activity into the activities list, or really into a YS essay. You might have a supplemental narrative essay where they ask you to talk about an extracurricular. So that's a space where you could dive into one extracurricular. But in this section, you can zoom into several using a theme to unify them. And you might call this theme the kind of the cross-application narrative, the headline of your application, of the kind of person you are and student you want to be, and the academics that you want to pursue. So this section is a way you can kind of share the best of from your resume. It's like a curated best of that gives a great snapshot of the activities and academics that you're going to be doing at the college. And this is all in the past, by the way. This is you're not talking about things you want to do. This is a place you can zoom into things you already have completed, you have already done. So I have here independent research projects and their results, especially important for STEM students, internships, jobs, volunteer positions, summer school programs, pre-college programs. You can zoom into the work in this section. There's a lot of do's and don'ts about how to do this. And we're going to go over some examples so you know what we're talking about, all right? The first thing is you do not write in prose form. This is not a creative essay space. This is not even like for prose. You want to write in bulleted form. Again, you're on borrowed time. So people can scan bulleted outlines a lot better than paragraphs. Do not list hardships that are common. Like I said, online learning is a common hardship. Nor without how you overcame them, meaning you always include your remedy to the problem when listing hardships. So if there was, like, my school didn't offer any APs in economics, what did you do about that? You want to apply to an econ degree or a business degree, but your school didn't have economics. It's not going to help you to say, I don't have any econ content in my transcript because my school didn't offer it. That isn't good enough for a lot of these top schools. It's really not, unfortunately. They really need to see you go out of your way to get the content you need to be college ready for the degree you want. So you could list that here. My school didn't have it, so I took AP micro and macroeconomics online in the summer. Or I joined an econ course at the continuing education program at the community college, or some other remedy that you found. The most important thing schools pay attention to are what you did about the hardship. That's really true also in essays. It's not enough to describe the hardship. You got to talk about what you did. I often summarize the add info section as resume plus. It's sort of like you say more than you would in just a resume. A resume is sort of like the activity sheet in the Common App. You don't give drilled in, zoomed in details. So you want to elaborate on these core achievements and activities. look for measurable results. The amount your club raised, the number of pillows you sewed for the family shelter, the number of tutoring students you served. Of course, some of this can end up in the activity sheet too, but the character count is so limited. Sometimes you can't get into these kinds of details. So this is a space where you could do that. Milestones surpassed in that activity. You know, the date that the study or article was published, the date the book was published, and the events around that, the awards won by that work. Also, I really like to add memorable moments, favorite memories. So you might include a bullet point about, like, there was this one particular student I connected with that really changed me. Or a highlight for me was this crowdfund I did, and the energy we created in that moment. Or the day that I finished the last pillow, and there was this mountain of handmade pillows in my bedroom that I was going to go give out later. That image really lasted for me in my mind. Like, that's really, I think, up for a cool thing to do in this section. It takes it from being kind of dry and just, like, you know, data and stats and classic resume stuff, and adds a little bit of image and narrative. Oh yeah, don't copy and paste your resume. This is not a space for resumes. If you're going to send a resume, you want it to be a different thing. There is actually a thing called a college resume that I'm not going to talk about very much here. But it's a one sheet that packages all of your activities and achievements in a resume format, and it focuses more on activities and achievements than on your high school academics. And it's usually read in one page, and scans pretty quick. It's also totally optional. Every school that will accept one may not ever open it. But you could upload it to the school, possibly in the Common App. Sometimes there's the field for that, but most often it's after you've submitted the Common App and the school sets you up on their independent, unique admissions platform, and you get a whole login, and then you can submit things like the college resume, an art portfolio if you want to add an art portfolio. Sometimes you can add scientific studies, published articles, important academic papers that you've written for school. Those could also be supplementals that you could add in the independent portal. But it's all extra bonus, and who knows if they'll ever open it. I will explain in a minute how they use this stuff, okay? Yeah, don't write this without help. It is pretty important, I think, to get an adult in this process for additional info and the YSS. I mean, really all of this college application stuff, if you're applying at a higher level, having an adult look it over, help you give it some polish, make it more readable. Really, really, really important. Even if you're not a high school student and you were an adult applying to college, I still think it would be really key to get other adults in the room to help look it over, because there's a lot of writing, and giving it some strong polish is really, really good for the impression that you make. You could also hire a professional admissions coach like myself. So I'll talk about that later. Here's just one example of an additional information section. And I'm not going to read this out loud to all of us. I'm just going to give you a little bit of the flavor of how it reads. So this was a student that did some research projects at Columbia University as a high school student. They're applying as an urban studies major. and they're very involved in social sciences. So they did a study looking at how does school attendance affect graduation, and they looked at data inside of this database called Open Data NYC. And he says here, using data from Open Data NYC, we analyzed student attendance at NYC schools, separating them into specialized top 40 and regular high schools. We found that 4%, a 4% difference in attendance from regular schools to top 40 schools were associated with a near 30% difference in graduation rate. So the results from the specialized high schools were very similar to those from the top 40 school, with fewer minor differences in the percentage attendance. So, and then he gives the date of the presentation of the findings at Columbia University, and then his high school, Columbia Secondary School, that he gave to the staff and faculty with NYC Department of Education guests. Yeah, so you can tell from this quick drill in, this isn't just like some line in a resume. You get the sense like, okay, there was substantial study here, substantial work done, and there was a presentation with important people. So you can get a sense, okay, this student can hold their own when it comes to research and present to groups. They're the real deal. This next one is very similar. I'm not going to read it, but it has a similar takeaway. This is how the same student did summarized research papers. So these research papers, I think, were also uploaded to the school's independent platform, but he also summarized them here. So if a admissions reader didn't want to look at those, they could read these abstracts. And this also helps give the sense of the student's academic skill, especially in humanities. So I'll just read one of these. So for a course called Global History 2, they did a fully cited thesis project. One man's triumph is another man's tragedy, the Algerian Independence War in the Pied Noir exile. This paper argues that the group of French colonists that had integrated Algerian society in the decolonization period of the 1960s have been both physically exiled from their home in Algeria post-decolonization and socially exiled by French society once they arrived in France. So this idea of a reverse colonization that was going on in this essay. So you can get a sense, okay, they're dealing with meaty academic ideas. This student did very well. They ended up at Columbia at the end. So those are some of the like chunky nuts and bolts, content dense statements. There are also statements in the Common App that are narrative, that are shorter form, that are not the like personal essay. They're usually 250 words, like tell us about an extracurricular, tell us about someone with a different point of view from you, who grew you or challenged you, as many prompts that look for a narrative. And the best way to move on those kinds of statements, I find, is to use this tool that I use to start the personal statement called the College Essay Starter. You can go to my website and do it. If you email me, I can also send you there. I'll give you my email at the end. This essay starter is fantastic for, of course, starting personal statements, but it's just as useful for starting narrative statements in the supplements, as well as finding topics for interviews, scholarship statements, you name it. So you can go to my website for that, or you can email me and I'll send you the link or set you up with your own independent version. All right, so enough about all of that content. I want to talk about the services I provide. Oh, wait, before I do that, I also want to just briefly say, how do universities use these supplements? I think I've made it pretty clear already how the YS is used. It's their take on how prepared you are to be a student at their school, how planned your vision is, how much does your resume prepare you, or your past experience prepare you to do what you want. So that's what they do with that. That's why they're asking it. But when they use optional elements like additional info, an art portfolio, an uploaded study or term paper, how do they use this? In general, these statements are not read in the first round of admissions. There are many rounds to admissions, usually at top schools. They're often opened later so that they can differentiate between students. So when they're getting down into the harder decision-making process, they might open up these optional sections to see how they're being filled, what the student wants to say. Sometimes ad info will be read before in the first round too. It's not left out all the time. And the additional info in particular can be really helpful in those later stages because it helps give an image of the student that's just like neat and tidy, cohesive, and dimensional. The other stuff, like a portfolio, a sample piece of academic writing, etc., scientific study, these will be looked at, really if it's like kind of neck and neck between students and they need to like get more reasons to say yes or no, like go open up that extra stuff. But again, they're reading so many applications, they don't go to it right away. All right. If you have any questions, we will get to them in a second. First off, I offer a free consultation to anybody. So if you haven't had one with me, you can email me and sign up for one. It's absolutely, totally happy to do it. If you have a YS essay that you started or an additional info section statement you started, I'm happy to look at that, or anything really. If you even just want to talk about your overall admissions plan, we can do that too. I have a lot of essay coaching programs. I help students with all sides of the application, from the personal statement to the supplements to the resume, the activities list. I also help students with their college list building, and I know a lot about sort of the ins and outs of specific schools and their admissions offices and what the schools are looking for. So I can often help students with their list and match make, if you will. I help, of course, lessen all that stress with my services, organizing the work. It can be a lot of writing and it can be really overwhelming. So I bring people into a step-by-step plan and calendar of work that's doable and realistic. And the parents, dear parents, you can stress less. So I also have all different kinds of pricing and budget and plans for different budgets and needs. So just email me at the email you see here, Justin@WowCollegeSA, and let's chat. Let's get into my schedule if you're interested. Again, even if you don't want services, but you do want the free 30, absolutely happy to give it. All right. Oh yeah, one promotion. I do have packages that are unlimited. So these are packages that cover every single aspect of an application. You could do it for just one school, you could do it for 2, 3, up to an unlimited number of schools. And I'm offering a promotion on these until September 20th. 10% off. I don't offer this promotion very often. It's usually like just a few weeks out of the year. So between now and September 20th, if you sign up for one, you get 10% off, which can be a pretty high value at higher levels. All right, so let's jump into Q&A. Boop, boop, boop. Great. So let's see here. Well, we don't have any questions yet. Let's see. Students often ask me things about, especially when it comes to the supplements, like how to do them in a way that doesn't overtake your entire life. And because if you're applying to a lot of schools, my gosh, it can really pile up. So one way is, of course, to use that YS template that we looked at the beginning. But another way is to find, when you're doing like narrative supplements and stuff, is to find those key stories and key resume experiences that you really want schools to know about, and make sure that you are using them in some way in each application. And you can recycle statements a lot that way. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes schools ask for things that you just can't recycle, like the U Chicago statements, some of the MIT statements, the Stanford. But a lot of them can recycle. And one way, again, to do that is to ask yourself, what are the key experiences, images, stories from my resume, my background that I really want schools to have. And so that content can be adapted to different applications, so you're not rewriting from zero every time. Of course, I offer a lot of help for that. And if you're interested in getting that kind of support, you know what to do. You can just email me. All right, well, we're coming up on the hour, so I'm going to end it there. It's been really wonderful to share this content with you. Getting into college can be such a big mountain. Do reach out if you want any help at all, even if it's just to ask a simple question about how, certain applications work. Happy to answer without any issue. So with that, I thank you all for your time. Oh, and if you want to do any, if you want any help on the personal statement and you haven't seen my personal statements that wow, college essays that wow from earlier this week, part 1 of this webinar, go ahead, look at that. That helps also share a lot of ideas that are useful in the rest of the application. So go check that out as well. And again, I'm always here to help you guys. All right, it's been awesome. Take care and have a great application experience. Get into those schools. Bye-bye.